The rancher jokingly swore to marry the Apache girl. Now she's returned as his wife. Cacti dotted the horizon, and the distant mountains cast long shadows as the afternoon heat settled over the ranch. The ranch itself was modest but hardworking. Thomas, a young rancher in his mid-20s, had grown up running alongside cattle, tending the fields and learning the rhythms of nature from his father. Life on the ranch was never easy. Every day was a new challenge. The cattle needed feeding, the fences needed mending, and the land demanded constant attention. But Thomas loved this life. He loved the smell of fresh hay, the sound of horses' hooves clattering against dry earth, and the quiet moments when the sky turned pink at sunset. On one of these ordinary afternoons, Thomas found himself sitting under a large mesquite tree, wiping sweat from his brow. His friends, ranch hands who had grown up alongside him, were scattered nearby, repairing fences and checking on the livestock. Laughter floated across the open field as they joked about everything and nothing. In the midst of this ordinary day, there was one presence that always seemed to bring energy wherever she went. Gianna, a young Apache girl from a nearby settlement. Gianna was known in the local communities for her strength, her kindness, and her fearless spirit. She often helped neighbors with chores, tending to animals, carrying water, and offering her assistance wherever it was needed. She moved with confidence and grace, and even in her quiet moments, her eyes shone with determination and intelligence. Thomas had noticed her for years. He admired her courage and her commitment to helping others, though he had never confessed these thoughts aloud. To him, she was like a part of the land itself, strong, enduring, and full of quiet beauty. That afternoon, Ayana had arrived at the ranch to help with some small chores. She carried a basket of freshly picked vegetables from her family's garden, offering them as a gift. Thomas waved her over, smiling warmly. "You didn't have to do that, Ayana," he said. She shrugged lightly, setting the basket down. "I like helping," she replied simply, her voice calm but firm. There was an ease about her, a natural confidence that made people trust her and feel comfortable in her presence. Thomas chuckled. "Always so responsible," he said, shaking his head. His friends, noticing her, began teasing him. "Careful, Thomas," one called. "She might just make you work harder than the rest of us." Laughter erupted, echoing across the plains. Thomas rolled his eyes, trying to brush off the attention, but there was a warmth in his chest he couldn't quite ignore. Feeling playful and perhaps a little bold under the heat of the afternoon sun, Thomas laughed and said almost jokingly, "Well, maybe I should marry her then. That way she'll be stuck helping me forever." His words hung in the air, light and teasing. Everyone laughed louder, slapping their knees and shouting playful remarks. Even Iana laughed, shaking her head with a grin that seemed to challenge his joking tone. "Marry you?" she asked, her eyes wide with amusement. "That would be an interesting idea." Thomas waved his hand, brushing off the moment. "I'm only joking," he said, but the words felt heavier than he intended. There was a strange feeling that lingered between them, a quiet acknowledgement that went beyond the playful joke. Yana's laughter faded into a thoughtful smile, and Thomas found himself looking at her longer than he probably should have. In those few minutes, the energy between them shifted. It was as if the plains themselves had grown quieter, waiting to see what would happen next. Neither of them spoke for a while. Thomas returned to checking the fences, pretending to be busy, but he kept sneaking glances at Ayana as she tidied up the small area where she had worked. She moved with purpose, every action confident and steady, yet there was a softness in her gestures that drew his attention. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Thomas's friends left one by one, leaving just him and Ayana behind. For a moment, there was no teasing, no joking, just a quiet understanding that something important had been said, even if it was only in jest. Ayana looked at him, tilting her head slightly. "You know, words have a funny way of staying with people," she said softly. Thomas raised an eyebrow, curious. "Even jokes?" he asked. She nodded. "Especially jokes," she replied with a small smile. Thomas laughed nervously, scratching the back of his neck. "Well then, I hope this one doesn't follow us forever," he said. But deep down, he knew that it might. There was something in Hyana's presence that made even the lightest words feel weighty. The afternoon passed slowly. They worked side by side, fixing fences and tending to the smaller animals, sharing small stories about their days, and laughing at simple mistakes. Thomas noticed how Ayana's hands moved skillfully, how she could lift heavy objects without strain, and how her voice carried a calm authority that seemed to make the animals trust her immediately. He realized that this young Apache girl, whom he had once only seen as a friend, had a strength and presence that left a mark on everyone she met. By the time the sun began its descent, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Thomas and Ayana sat together on a small hill overlooking the ranch. The land stretched endlessly before them, bathed in golden light. For a few quiet moments, they simply watched, enjoying the peace that comes at the end of a long day. Thomas thought about the joke he had made earlier about marrying Ayana. What had been a casual, teasing remark now felt more meaningful. Not because he expected it to happen right away, but because it revealed something he hadn't acknowledged before, a deep admiration, a quiet affection that had been growing silently over time. Ayana, too, seemed to be lost in thought. She gazed at the horizon, the fading light reflecting in her eyes. She had always respected Thomas for his hard work, his dedication to the land, and his loyalty to his friends and family. But now she found herself wondering what it would mean if the playful words from earlier were ever meant to be more than a joke. The wind picked up slightly, rustling the tall grasses, and they both felt a gentle chill. Thomas stood, brushing the dirt from his pants. "I should get back," he said, though neither moved immediately. There was a pause, a quiet space filled with unspoken thoughts. Ayana smiled again, the same thoughtful expression lingering on her face. "See you tomorrow, Thomas," she said. It was simple, but somehow it carried a sense of promise. Thomas nodded, feeling a strange warmth that had nothing to do with the sun and everything to do with the girl standing before him. As Ayana walked back toward her home, Thomas stayed on the hill for a few more minutes, looking out over the ranch. He thought about the joke, the laughter, and the quiet moments they had shared. He realized that life on the plains was unpredictable, filled with challenges and hard work, but also moments of unexpected connection. He didn't know what the future held, but he felt certain of one thing. Ayana had left a mark on his heart that could not easily be erased. That evening, as Thomas sat by the fireplace, cleaning his tools and reflecting on the day, he found himself smiling at the memory of Ayana's laugh. The joke he had made under the mesquite tree seemed less like a jest and more like a whisper of destiny, subtle and unassuming, yet impossible to ignore. He shook his head with a chuckle. "She'll probably never take me seriously," he murmured to himself. But somewhere deep down he hoped that maybe, just maybe, she might. The night fell, cool and quiet, and the ranch settled into a calm stillness. Stars dotted the sky, stretching endlessly above the plains. Thomas looked up, thinking of the future, the land, and the girl who had walked through his life with courage, grace, and a spark that refused to be ignored. Little did he know, the joke he had made that afternoon would echo through time in ways he could never have imagined. Life on the plains had a rhythm of its own, slow yet relentless. Seasons changed, sometimes bringing gentle rains, other times scorching heat or unexpected droughts. Thomas continued his work on the ranch, learning with each passing day that managing cattle and land was far more than a job. It was a responsibility that demanded patience, strength, and endurance. He rose before dawn, tended to the livestock, repaired fences, and ensured the ranch could sustain itself no matter what the land demanded. There were days filled with satisfaction, watching the sun rise over green pastures or seeing healthy calves take their first steps. But there were also days of struggle when the cattle fell ill, the crops withered, or a sudden storm threatened to undo weeks of hard work. Through it all, Thomas persevered, guided by determination and the hope that the ranch would one day flourish beyond survival. Meanwhile, Ayana's life was following a different path. After finishing her basic education, she moved to a nearby town to pursue further opportunities and help her family. Her decision was driven by responsibility and love for her family, but it also gave her a chance to explore a world beyond the plains she had grown up in. She quickly adapted to the town's pace, finding work wherever she could, assisting neighbors and learning new skills. Even in the bustling streets, she retained the calm confidence that had always defined her. Ayana's friends and family admired her courage, as she carried herself with dignity and determination, never allowing hardships to weigh her down. Despite the distance between them, both Thomas and Ayana often found themselves thinking about the other. For Thomas, memories of the playful afternoon under the mesquite tree were never far. He remembered her laughter, the way she carried herself, and the quiet strength that had drawn him in from the very first meeting. He tried to dismiss it as mere admiration, but there were moments, quiet and private, when he realized that his feelings went deeper. He missed her presence on the ranch, missed the way their conversations flowed easily, and most of all, missed the energy she brought with her. Ayana, on the other hand, sometimes recalled the ranch and the young man who had made a joking promise to marry her. She remembered the sincerity hidden behind his playful words, the quiet care he showed in everything he did, and the warmth in his eyes. Even as life moved her forward, she carried the memory of Thomas with her, tucked away like a treasured keepsake. She wondered what he was doing, how the ranch was holding up, and if he still thought of her in those rare quiet moments, just as she did of him. As months turned into years, the distance between them seemed to grow. Thomas faced challenges on the ranch that tested his patience and resilience. Harsh winters brought freezing winds that damaged fences and made caring for the livestock even more difficult. Summer droughts threatened crops and water supplies, yet he refused to give up. Every obstacle became a lesson, teaching him that hard work, persistence, and faith in oneself were the keys to survival. During these long, solitary hours, he often found himself thinking about Ayana. He realized that the memory of her laughter and her determined spirit had become a source of strength for him. The playful promise he had made years ago now felt like more than a joke. It was a quiet thread connecting him to someone who mattered deeply, even if they were far apart. Ayana, too, faced her share of hardships. Living in town brought new responsibilities, supporting her family, managing household tasks, and working long hours. There were days when she felt overwhelmed, but she never let it show. Her resilience, once nurtured in the open plains and under the guidance of her family, became her guiding light in the town. Friends noticed her strength and reliability, and people trusted her instincts. Yet in the quiet moments of the evening, when the streets were empty and the town seemed to settle into a soft hush, she would find herself thinking of the ranch, the open plains, and Thomas. She remembered the laughter, the teasing, and the way he had seemed both confident and kind-hearted at the same time. Those memories were a quiet comfort during difficult days, reminding her that even in a life full of responsibilities, there were connections worth cherishing. Despite the passage of time, news of each other occasionally reached them. Mutual friends and neighbors would sometimes mention Thomas or Ayana in passing. Thomas heard that Ayana was doing well, helping her family and making a name for herself in town. Ayana heard that Thomas was managing the ranch diligently, facing challenges with determination and ingenuity. These snippets of information, though brief, were enough to maintain a sense of connection between them. They reminded both that, despite distance and time, their lives remained intertwined in small but meaningful ways. One particular year brought a harsh drought to the region. The sun burned hotter than usual, and the rivers and streams that sustained the ranch ran low. Thomas worked tirelessly to save the livestock, carrying water in heavy barrels, reinforcing the weakened fences, and finding creative ways to protect crops. The work was exhausting, and many nights he lay awake under the starlit sky, wondering how much longer he could keep everything going. During these long nights, he thought of Yana and wondered how she would handle such trials. He imagined her calm determination, her practical solutions, and the way she never let hardship crush her spirit. These thoughts gave him solace, a reminder that strength could be found not just in effort but also in the belief that someone cared, even from afar. Meanwhile, Yana's life in town was not without its challenges. Her family relied heavily on her income, and she often took extra work to ensure they were cared for. The crowded streets, noisy markets, and endless responsibilities could feel overwhelming at times. Yet she drew on the lessons from her childhood on the plains, the value of hard work, the importance of perseverance, and the strength that comes from staying true to oneself. During moments of quiet reflection, she would recall the ranch, the open air, and Thomas's steady presence. Those memories were like a gentle anchor, reminding her that no matter how difficult life became, there were moments of joy, connection, and hope to hold on to. Though they were apart, life seemed to prepare both for something more. Thomas, hardened by years of labor and challenges, began to recognize that the playful bond he had shared with Ayana had grown into something deeper, a quiet affection rooted in respect, admiration, and shared values. Yana, through her own experiences and challenges, realized that the young man she had once laughed with on the plains had matured into someone with integrity, strength, and a heart capable of love. Each, in their own way, carried the memory of that playful promise and the hope that life might, in time, bring them back together. In the evenings, as the sky turned shades of pink, orange, and purple, Thomas often walked the ranch, thinking of Ayana. He remembered her laughter, her courage, and the ease with which she had carried herself. He remembered how her presence had made even ordinary chores feel lighter, how her smile had seemed to brighten even the hardest days. He realized that the joke he had made years ago was no longer just a playful remark. It had been a spark, a quiet signpost pointing toward something meaningful, something worth holding on to. Yana, too, would sometimes gaze at the horizon from her small town, imagining the open plains, the golden grass, and the steady figure of Thomas working tirelessly on the ranch. She remembered the sound of laughter, the warmth of shared moments, and the quiet understanding that had passed between them. Life in town was busy and demanding, but the thought of Thomas and the ranch gave her a sense of calm, a reminder that even amid responsibilities and challenges, there were connections that endured. Over time, both came to realize that life had a way of teaching patience. The years apart, though difficult, had strengthened them in ways they could not have imagined. Thomas learned resilience, resourcefulness, and the quiet joy of moments spent alone in nature's company. Yana learned independence, perseverance, and the strength that comes from caring deeply for others. And through it all, both carried the memory of each other, a playful afternoon under a mesquite tree, a shared laugh, and a joking promise that had somehow planted a seed that neither had forgotten. As Part 2 closes, life continues its steady rhythm, preparing the stage for the next chapter. Thomas works tirelessly, facing the challenges of the ranch with unwavering determination. Yana navigates her own journey, building a life that is both responsible and independent. Yet beneath the surface of their daily routines, a quiet connection endures. A bond formed in laughter, strengthened by admiration, and preserved in memory, waiting patiently for the day when their paths might cross once more. The years apart have only made the heart's memory stronger, and both sense, even without knowing it, that life has something extraordinary in store for them. The years continued to pass on the plains, each season bringing its own rhythm and challenges. Thomas had grown into a man shaped by the land he loved and the work he devoted himself to. The ranch, though still modest, had become a testament to his perseverance. Every fence, every field, and every healthy animal spoke of his dedication. Yet amid the endless work, there was an emptiness he could not ignore, a quiet longing for the girl whose laughter had once lit up his days, whose presence had made even the hardest labor seem lighter. Gianna had never left his mind, though he seldom admitted it, even to himself. Meanwhile in town, Ayana's life had also evolved. She had become an important figure in her community, respected for her diligence, her intelligence, and her unyielding kindness. She continued to support her family, ensuring their needs were met, and their lives made easier despite the struggles they faced. Though she had grown independent, there were still moments when her thoughts drifted to the plains, to the sprawling ranch, and to the young man who had once jokingly promised to marry her. That memory, playful and light as it was, had taken root in her heart, lingering quietly through years of responsibility and work. One particular summer, the region faced a sudden and violent flood. Rain had poured incessantly for days, swelling rivers and creeks that normally ran calmly across the plains. Homes were damaged, livestock threatened, and the community faced an emergency unlike anything many had seen before. News of the disaster reached Thomas almost immediately. Though the ranch had survived the storms with minimal damage thanks to careful preparation, Thomas knew that many families had not been as fortunate. His heart went to the people he had known for years, and most of all to Ayana's family who lived along the riverbank. Without hesitation, Thomas prepared to help. He loaded wagons with supplies, blankets, food, and water, planning to travel to the affected areas to assist neighbors. The wind howled as the skies opened wider, and the rain fell in sheets, but Thomas refused to let the storm deter him. He knew that in times like these, people needed hands to help, courage to stay calm, and hope to hold on to. He rode through the muddy paths, thinking of the small community he had grown up with and of the girl who had always been at the heart of it. When Thomas arrived near Ayana's home, the sight that met him was chaotic. The floodwaters had reached the houses, carrying debris and leaving destruction in their wake. Families were trying to salvage belongings, children clung to frightened parents, and neighbors worked together to save whatever they could. Amid the chaos, Thomas spotted a familiar figure moving confidently through the rising waters. It was Ayana. She was helping her younger siblings, lifting them to safety, moving with a calm determination that seemed impossible under such dangerous conditions. Thomas's heart swelled with admiration and relief. Despite the years, despite the distance, Ayana had retained the strength and courage he had always admired. He rode closer, calling out her name over the roar of the flood. "Ayana!" he shouted, urgency in his voice. She looked up, recognition flashing in her eyes. For a moment, time seemed to pause amidst the rushing waters. Their eyes met, and the years of separation melted away, replaced by a shared understanding that they were both there for the same purpose, to protect, to help, and to survive. Thomas jumped down from his horse and quickly joined her. Together, they worked side by side, lifting what they could from the rising waters, carrying supplies, and helping families reach safer ground. The flood tested them both physically and mentally, but there was an unspoken coordination between them, a rhythm that came from years of respect and familiarity. In those intense moments, Thomas saw not just the girl he had once laughed with under a mesquite tree, but a woman whose strength and courage shone brighter than ever. Yana, in turn, observed Thomas's calm determination and unwavering resolve. He was no longer the playful young rancher. He had grown into a man of integrity and courage, someone capable of leading and protecting when the world seemed to fall apart. Hours passed, and the flood slowly began to recede. Families were safe, belongings salvaged, and the immediate danger had passed. Exhausted, soaked to the bone, and covered in mud, Thomas and Ayanna finally paused to rest. They sat on a partially flooded embankment, their eyes meeting with a mixture of relief, admiration, and something deeper that neither could deny. "I can't believe how strong you've become," Thomas said quietly, his voice carrying both wonder and respect. Ayanna smiled, brushing wet hair from her face. "It's been a hard few years, but you learned to manage," she replied. "I'm glad you came. I don't know how we would have managed without your help." Thomas shook his head, smiling faintly. "I should have come sooner. I should have been here all along," he said. His voice was low, thoughtful, almost like he was confessing a truth he had carried for years. Ayanna looked at him, understanding the weight of his words. "It's not about the past, Thomas," she said gently. "What matters is now. We're here together, and we helped." That day marked a turning point. The flood had forced them back into each other's lives, but it also revealed the depth of their bond. Their shared effort in the crisis reminded them of the qualities that had drawn them together in the first place: trust, courage, and a natural ease in each other's presence. The playful promise from years ago, once thought to be nothing more than a joke, now carried a strange significance. It had foreshadowed a connection that neither distance nor time could erase. In the days following the flood, Thomas offered Ayanna and her family shelter at the ranch until their home could be repaired. The ranch became a temporary refuge, a place where laughter returned, stories were shared, and the bond between Thomas and Ayanna strengthened. They worked together to repair damages, tend to animals, and organize supplies for neighbors affected by the flood. Every task, no matter how small, became a reminder of their compatibility, their shared values, and the natural partnership that had always existed between them. During quiet moments, when the work paused and the sun dipped below the horizon, Thomas and Ayanna would walk the land together. They spoke of memories of the years apart and of the challenges they had faced. Their conversations were easy, flowing from serious matters to playful teasing, just as they had years before. It was in these moments that both realized something important. The connection they shared was no longer just friendship. It was respect, admiration, and the beginning of love that had been quietly growing for years. The flood, though destructive, had brought clarity. It reminded them that life was unpredictable, and that moments of crisis often revealed the strength and character of those around you. Thomas saw Ayanna's courage and determination firsthand, while Ayanna saw Thomas's steadfastness and unwavering care. Together, they realized that the playful bond of youth had matured into a profound understanding and affection. Evenings at the ranch became a time for reflection. Sitting under the vast, starry sky, Thomas thought about the years that had passed, the struggles on the ranch, the hardships in town, and the quiet moments in between. He realized that the playful promise he had made years ago was not just a fleeting joke. It had been the beginning of a story neither of them could have predicted. Ayanna, seated beside him, shared the same sentiment, feeling a deep sense of connection and trust that went beyond words. By the end of that week, the floodwaters had fully receded, and Ayanna's family was ready to return home. Yet, something had changed. The bond between Thomas and Ayanna was undeniable. They had faced a crisis together, and through it, had discovered the depth of their feelings for one another. The playful afternoon under the mesquite tree, the years of separation, and the memories they had carried now converged into a quiet understanding. Their lives were meant to intersect in meaningful ways. As Ayanna and her family prepared to leave the ranch, Thomas stood with her for a moment, holding back words that had been growing inside him for years. "This doesn't have to end here," he said quietly. "We've faced a lot together, and I want you to know how I feel." Ayanna looked at him, her eyes reflecting the floodlights of past challenges and present emotions. "I've always known," she replied softly. "Even when we were apart, I never forgot. I just didn't know when life would allow us to find each other again." In that quiet exchange, the unspoken promise of years past began to take shape. The playful words, the laughter, and the connection they had shared in youth now became the foundation for something real, something lasting. The flood had not only tested their courage, but had also revealed the depth of their bond, a bond that would continue to grow, guiding them toward a shared future neither had dared to imagine before. The days after the flood settled into a calmer rhythm, but the atmosphere between Thomas and Ayanna was noticeably different. What had once been playful friendship had begun to shift into something deeper, subtle, yet undeniable. Every glance, every shared smile, carried an unspoken understanding that they were no longer just two people who knew each other from childhood. They were partners in thought, effort, and emotion. The bond that had been dormant for years was now awakening, strengthened by the trials they had endured together. Thomas had invited Ayanna to stay at the ranch for as long as she needed, initially only to ensure her family's home was restored. But as the days passed, it became evident that her presence brought a sense of joy and energy to the ranch that could not be ignored. The ranch, which had always been a place of hard work and routine, now seemed brighter and lighter. Even the animals seemed more content, responding to the calm but firm manner in which Ayanna moved through the fields. Thomas found himself looking forward to their mornings together, the moments when they planned tasks, tended to the animals, or simply shared quiet conversation. It was during these shared moments that Thomas began to see the depth of Ayanna's character in ways he had never fully appreciated before. Her attention to detail, her thoughtfulness, and her ability to approach every challenge with calm determination impressed him more each day. He noticed the small things, how she adjusted the feed to ensure the weaker animals had enough, how she carefully repaired a fence post with precision, how she always remembered the little preferences of the neighbors they helped. These qualities, combined with her courage and compassion, made Thomas realize that the playful promise he had once made under the mesquite tree was no longer a joke in his heart. He wanted more than friendship. He wanted her presence not just in the short term, but in a life that he hoped they could share together. Ayanna, meanwhile, began to see Thomas in a new light. His years on the ranch had shaped him into a man of patience, wisdom, and quiet strength. She saw how he handled adversity with resilience, how he never let frustration control him, and how he treated others with fairness and kindness. The young man she had once teased and laughed with had matured into someone she could respect deeply, someone whose actions reflected integrity and care. Each shared task, each conversation, strengthened her realization that Thomas was not just a friend or neighbor. He was someone she could imagine building a future with. Their mornings were spent repairing fences and tending animals, while afternoons were filled with shared meals, laughter, and stories. They would often pause by the barn or under the shade of the large mesquite tree, reflecting on the past and imagining possibilities for the future. The memory of the joking promise they had exchanged years ago came up more often than either expected. It started with light teasing, a shared laugh about how long ago it had been, but gradually those conversations became deeper, more heartfelt. "I can't believe how long ago that was," Thomas said one evening, leaning against the fence. "I joked about marrying you, and now I can't stop thinking about what it might mean." Ayanna looked at him thoughtfully, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I never forgot that day," she admitted softly. "Even when we were apart, it stayed with me. It made me wonder if life would ever let us cross paths again in a meaningful way." Thomas's chest tightened with emotion. "I've thought about it too," he confessed. "Not as a joke, not as a passing thought, but as something real, something I want." The words hung in the air, heavy with sincerity. For a moment, neither spoke, both feeling the weight of years, distance, and unspoken feelings. Yet in that silence there was clarity, a realization that what they had shared in childhood, the playful bond and mutual respect, had evolved into something far more profound. In the following days, their connection deepened further. They worked side by side, not just on the ranch, but in the lives of those around them. Helping neighbors repair homes damaged by the flood, organizing supplies, and offering support to those in need became a shared mission. Each act of service strengthened their respect for one another and revealed the harmony in their partnership. Thomas admired how Ayanna approached each challenge with thoughtful consideration, while Ayanna noticed Thomas's unwavering dedication and problem-solving skills. Together, they formed a team that was greater than the sum of its parts. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped low over the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink, Thomas and Ayanna walked along a small trail that led to the edge of the ranch. The air was warm but gentle, carrying the scent of wildflowers and fresh earth. Thomas stopped, turning to face her. His heart raced, but his voice was steady. "Yana," he began, "these past few days being with you, working with you, seeing your courage and kindness, I realize I've wanted this for a long time. I don't just want to be your friend. I want to be by your side in everything, through the hard days and the good ones." Yana's eyes softened, a small smile forming. "Thomas," she said gently, "I feel the same way. I've thought about this for years, and being here, seeing you again, experiencing life together, I know now that I want the same thing. I want to share my life with you." In that moment, a sense of relief and joy washed over them both. The uncertainty of the past, the distance, and the playful promise that had once seemed meaningless had all led to this moment of clarity. They embraced, a simple gesture filled with the weight of years, experience, and mutual understanding. It was not dramatic or hurried. It was quiet, natural, and deeply emotional. The days that followed were filled with conversations about the future. They discussed the life they wanted to build together, blending the traditions of the ranch with the wisdom and experiences each had gained over the years. Thomas spoke of his hopes for expanding the ranch, improving its sustainability, and creating a home that could support their family and the community. Yana shared her thoughts on education, helping others, and bringing new ideas to improve life for those around them. They realized that their visions complemented one another perfectly, and the thought of building that life together filled them with hope and excitement. Even in ordinary moments, their bond was evident. Sharing meals, tending the animals, and walking through the fields became more meaningful, each action a reflection of trust, companionship, and love. They found comfort in each other's presence, knowing that they had both grown and matured in ways that would allow their partnership to thrive. What had begun as a playful joke years ago had transformed into a deep, mutual commitment, grounded in respect, admiration, and shared values. As the sun set on another peaceful evening, Thomas and Ayanna sat under the mesquite tree where their story had first taken a playful turn. The tree, sturdy and timeless, seemed to witness the unfolding of a promise finally becoming real. Thomas reached for her hand, holding it gently but firmly. "I know we've both changed," he said softly, "but I hope we can face the future together, no matter what it brings." Yana squeezed his hand, her eyes reflecting both determination and warmth. "We will," she said confidently, "because we've faced so much already and we know how to stand together. Whatever comes next, we'll face it as a team." In that quiet moment, the foundation of their shared future was laid. The playful words of youth, the years of separation, and the trials they had endured had all led them here. They realized that love was not just about grand gestures or dramatic confessions. It was about understanding, patience, and mutual respect. It was about standing together in the face of challenges and celebrating the simple joys of life side by side. As the night sky spread above them, filled with stars, Thomas and Ayanna felt a profound sense of peace. The years of waiting, the uncertainties, and the distance had only strengthened their bond. They had discovered that the true meaning of connection was not fleeting laughter or playful words, but enduring support, shared vision, and the willingness to face life together. Their love, grounded in friendship, respect, and experience, was ready to grow into a life shared fully and deeply. That week at the ranch became a turning point. Thomas and Ayanna began planning their lives together, discussing the practicalities of merging their worlds while embracing the joys of companionship. Every conversation, every shared task, became a step toward a future they both knew was possible. And through it all, the playful promise from years ago was no longer a distant memory. It had become a living, breathing reality, guiding them toward a life built on trust, love, and shared purpose. The weeks that followed were filled with preparation, reflection, and a quiet excitement that neither Thomas nor Ayanna had ever experienced before. The playful promise that had started years ago, long thought to be a mere joke, had grown into something real and enduring. It was no longer about laughter or teasing. It was about a shared life, mutual respect, and love that had matured over time. Both knew that this was the moment to honor what had always been quietly growing between them. Thomas spent his days tending to the ranch, but now each task carried a sense of purpose beyond the usual labor. Every repaired fence, every cared-for animal, and every freshly tilled field was not just a demonstration of his dedication to the land, but a symbol of the life he wanted to build alongside Ayanna. The ranch, once a place of struggle and routine, had become a sanctuary where hope and love intertwined with hard work. He often found himself glancing toward the horizon, imagining a future where he and Ayanna shared the sunrises and sunsets, the quiet moments and the challenges together. Ayanna, too, embraced the change in her life. She helped with the daily tasks, guided others in their work, and offered wisdom and insight wherever it was needed. Yet beyond the practicalities, she also spent time imagining a life with Thomas, one filled with shared joys, understanding, and the simple pleasures that come from companionship. She cherished their conversations, the shared laughter, and even the small disagreements that strengthened their bond. Each day brought them closer, reinforcing the knowledge that they were meant to face life together. Their families and friends, who had witnessed their playful interactions in childhood and their dedication in adulthood, supported them wholeheartedly. When Thomas formally proposed that they marry, it was not with grand extravagance, but with sincerity and humility that reflected the lives they had both led. He knelt under the mesquite tree, the very tree where their bond had begun years ago, and spoke from his heart. Ayanna, the years have shown me that life is unpredictable, and yet there is one certainty I have found. I want to face everything with you by my side. Will you marry me? Ayanna's eyes glistened with tears, a mixture of joy and emotion. She nodded, her voice steady yet full of warmth. Yes, Thomas, I have always known, even when life kept us apart, that this was meant to be. I will marry you. Their embrace under the fading light of the sun was filled with years of longing, hope, and the quiet fulfillment of a promise that had waited patiently for the right time. The wedding itself was simple yet profoundly meaningful. Held at the ranch, it was attended by family, friends, and neighbors who had known them both throughout their lives. The ceremony took place under the mesquite tree, its sturdy branches symbolizing the enduring connection between Thomas and Ayanna. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the fields, illuminating the faces of those gathered and reflecting the warmth and joy of the occasion. As they exchanged vows, there was a sense of serenity and certainty that could not be denied. Thomas promised to honor, support, and love Ayanna in all circumstances, while Ayanna vowed to stand by him with unwavering loyalty, understanding, and affection. The words they spoke were simple, but each carried the weight of years of experience, growth, and shared challenges. There was no need for elaborate statements or dramatic gestures. Their lives, the bond they had nurtured, and the trials they had faced together spoke volumes more than words ever could. After the ceremony, the celebrations were filled with laughter, music, and shared stories. Friends and neighbors joined in, bringing dishes, sharing memories, and creating an atmosphere of warmth and belonging. Children ran through the fields, playing games and laughing, while elders shared advice and encouragement with the newlyweds. The sense of community and togetherness made the occasion even more special, reinforcing the idea that love is not just a private affair, but a connection that touches everyone around it. In the following days, Thomas and Ayanna settled into their life together at the ranch. Each morning began with the chores that had once seemed routine, now transformed into shared experiences that brought them closer. They tended to the animals, repaired fences, and worked the fields, always side by side, learning from each other, supporting each other, and celebrating even the smallest victories. Their partnership was natural, built on mutual respect and shared values, and strengthened by the love that had been patiently waiting for its time to blossom. Evenings were spent in quiet reflection, often under the mesquite tree or near the fireplace in the ranch house. They shared stories of their past, dreams for the future, and the small details of daily life that became meaningful in their shared journey. The years of separation, challenges, and unspoken feelings had taught them patience, resilience, and the value of true partnership. Each conversation, each shared smile, reinforced the knowledge that they had found something rare and enduring. As the seasons changed, the ranch flourished under their combined care. Crops grew strong, livestock thrived, and the land became a place of abundance and stability. But beyond the material growth, there was a deeper fulfillment, the joy of building a life together, of facing challenges hand in hand, and of creating a home filled with love, respect, and understanding. Thomas and Ayanna discovered that the true measure of success was not just the prosperity of the ranch, but the happiness, harmony, and connection they shared. Their bond also inspired those around them. Friends and neighbors often looked to them as an example of commitment, resilience, and the power of enduring love. They were seen not only as partners in life, but also as individuals who had grown together, faced adversity, and honored their shared promise. The story of their journey, from a playful joke to a fulfilled promise, became a quiet legend in the community, a reminder that love, patience, and respect can endure even the tests of time and distance. In quieter moments, Thomas and Ayanna often reflected on the journey that had brought them together. They remembered the playful afternoon under the mesquite tree, the years of separation, and the challenges that had tested their courage and patience. Each memory, each obstacle, was now a part of their shared story, a testament to the strength of their bond. They realized that life had a way of preparing people for the moments that truly mattered, and that the promise once made in jest had been a guiding force, patiently waiting for the right time to become reality. Children from the community began to visit the ranch, drawn by the warmth and kindness of Thomas and Ayanna. They shared stories of perseverance, courage, and partnership, teaching lessons of respect and dedication not through words alone, but through the example of their lives. The couple embraced these moments, recognizing that love and commitment were not only about their personal happiness, but also about the positive impact they could have on others. As the years passed, the ranch became more than just a home. It became a symbol of hope, resilience, and enduring love. Thomas and Ayanna continued to work together, side by side, building a life that honored both their pasts and their dreams for the future. Their marriage was filled with shared laughter, quiet understanding, and unwavering support, proving that true love is built not on grand gestures alone, but on everyday actions, mutual respect, and the patience to let it grow. On special evenings, Thomas and Ayanna would walk hand in hand through the fields, reflecting on the journey that had brought them together. The sun would set over the horizon, painting the sky in golden hues, and they would feel a deep sense of gratitude for the life they had built. The playful joke that had once seemed insignificant had transformed into a story of destiny and devotion, reminding them that love often arrives in unexpected ways, but when nurtured with care, it can endure a lifetime. Even decades later, the story of Thomas and Ayanna would be told among friends and neighbors, a tale of courage, patience, and love that grew stronger through time and trials. It was a story that began with laughter and a joking promise, and matured into a life shared fully and deeply, proving that the bonds we form, the connections we honor, and the love we nurture can shape our destiny in ways we never imagined. In the quiet of the night, as the stars shone over the vast plains, Thomas and Ayanna would sit together under the mesquite tree, now older but still full of love and laughter. They would speak softly, remembering the journey, sharing dreams, and simply enjoying the presence of one another. The ranch, the land, and their shared life had become a reflection of their love, a love that had grown from playful words to a lifelong commitment, enduring all challenges, distances, and years apart. And in that enduring love, Thomas and Ayanna found the ultimate fulfillment of a promise once spoken lightly, now honored fully, beautifully, and forever.